Hello everyone, today I'm making a manual here on how to use Simple Preflop. We are going to discuss some of its features in more detail. First thing we do, we put blinds and stacks right here in the top right corner. You can pick whatever blinds you want. It could be 0.51, like a small blind and big blind, right? Or you can type in the actual numbers, like, I don't know, if you're playing 200, 400, it would look like this. And then you can also pick entities. The only thing, if entity or any number here is fractional, then you should only use dot. This is the only way it would work, otherwise the number will not be included in the calculations at all. This has something to do with the way this whole thing was programmed, so yeah, only dots, no commas. And then we input the stack sizes for every player. The maximum amount of players here is 10. And if you want to add 1, you just type stack size here, and yeah, there you go. And then again, if you clear the stack size, then the whole player disappears from our calculations. Then we go to sizings. So we can set up sizings here for every player, and these little things are actually buttons. We can click here and the menu with sizing menu will open, just like that. And here we set up sizings both for preflop and postflop action. We have two columns. First is the size of bet. So for preflop, this is basically our sizings we choose for the raise first in. This could be anything you want in percentage of the pot, like 30% here. This could be a fraction of pot, like 3/4, or it could be all in. And you can choose up to 4 sizings for each action. And the second column is the size of raise for preflop. This is basically the size of 3-bet. And for postflop, it's the size of raise after someone bets. And then again, we have different options. It could be a fraction of pot. We have half pot, 2/3, and 3/4. It could be percentage of pot, or it could be raise X, where we can just choose the multiplier of the initial bet for our raise. Like if we go with raise X 3, the raise size in the game tree will be 3 times more than the initial bet. And then again, it could be the percentage of the pot, could be a fraction of a pot, like 2/3, and it could be all in. And basically the same thing goes for every postflop node. And again, you can choose up to 4 sizings for each spot, and if you choose none right here, then it's just none. I mean, you then have 2 sizings for this spot. And same goes for the raise size. You can choose up to 4. If you don't want 4th and 3rd, for example, you choose none. And yeah, basically the whole thing works the same. Then we have this little panel in the middle, which is basically our main configurations for sizing strategy. First, we have a max number of bets for each player. Well, basically this means that if we set this number at 3, for example, then for preflop each player has an opportunity to raise, re-raise, and then re-raise one more time. Only 3 aggressive actions. Next we have maximum players number in multi-way pots. Well, basically it determines the maximum amount of players in a multi-way pot for this certain player. Like for example here we work with the UTG player, and if we set this amount to 3, and if he raises and then 1 player re-raises and 2 player calls, this guy cannot overcall anymore, because he's going to be number 4 in this multi-way pot. So he can only shove or fold in this situation. But if you want him to overcall as the 4th player or even 5th player, then we set the number basically that we want. But you have to take into account the fact that the larger the number you choose for this option, the harder, the bigger the game tree will eventually be, and the tougher the calculations are for the computer. So it will take more time. Next, first action all in. Well, this one is easy. If you want the player to have an option to go all in as first in, then you check this box. If you don't, then you uncheck it. And this goes both for the preflop action and postflop action. The option to go all in as the very first action, in addition to all the other options that we chose, I mean all the other sizings that we've picked. So besides those two options for the flop of betting 30 and 65% pot, he will also have an option to go all in. Then we have last action always all in. Well, this one is basically for the river spots, so that we have this all in option on the last street. Next one, without preflop limp, this one is easy. We just exclude limps from player strategy preflop. And if you want limp as a part of strategy, then you uncheck this one. Then we have without any preflop call. Well, this one basically eliminates any preflop calls for the player. For example, it could be useful for the short stack play. Like if you have a spot with like 20, 14 BBs and you don't want any preflop calls, you only want re-raises and shoves, then you check this one. Then without preflop 3-bet plus cold calls. Well, if you enable this option, then the player will basically use the simplified strategy, where if there's a raise and the 3-bet before him, then he only shoves or folds. Next, without any preflop raise after call. This one means that if a player called, he will not be able to raise after. Next, only fold if 2+ raises after call. Well, this one means if a player called and then there are 2 raises after, then he only folds. He will never overcall or shove. And the last one here, round bet to nearest. This one says for itself, but the idea is if you want bet sizes to be rounded to a certain degree, like if you want these 65% bets to be rounded to a certain level, then you can set up this level of rounding, so to speak, right here. Then we have all in if more than a certain percent of stack. Well, how it works? If, for example, the bet size that you chose on the left, like 65% of pot, is actually equal to 48% of player's stack, then the program will not use this 65% pot bet sizing, it will just go all in. And of course you can choose here any number that you want. You can either use these little arrows up and down to set the amount that you want, or you can just type in right here, like 99 for example. Next we have name. So if you want to save this betting strategy, this little profile that you've created, you can pick a name and then click save, and you will have an access to this profile later. Well, let's do it for the sake of the video. Let's pick a name, new size, for example, then we click save, and then we can save it in a folder where Simple Preflop is installed. And yeah, if you want to update some sizing that you've created, sizing strategies that you've created before, you can override it. So just click on the file, and then click save, and yeah, this one will be updated. Or you can create a new one by picking a new name for it. And I'm not going to save it, I have already a lot of sizings saved before. And the last one, delete dong bet. If you enable this one, then this player will have no dong betting options post-flop at all, in every node of the game tree. And finally here on the right we have a list of all the sizing profiles that we saved before. So whenever we save bet sizing profile in the bet sizing folder, it then appears right here, and all we have to do is click on the profile that we want, and that's it. And finally, when you finished creating your sizing profile, or when you chose preset sizing profile, you have to click apply. And yeah, you can also quickly choose from the bet sizing profiles that you have saved right here in this little drop-down list. You just click on this little down arrow and there you go, all the preset sizings. And one more little interesting thing, if you have a lot of sizings for different spots, for example, that you have saved, you can group them up in a separate folder. For example, if you want a set of sizings for the 4-bet pots, you create a folder in this bet sizing folder, and you name it whatever, like 4-bet pots. Then you just move all the 4-bet sizings to this folder. And there you go. Very handy. You see this little arrow next to the 4-bet pot, and if we click it, there we go. We have all the 4-bet sizings. Those are the 4-bet sizing profiles that I moved to the 4-bet pot folder. And yeah, you can still find all those sizings here in this little drop-down list. If we mouse over a 4-bet pot, yeah, we see those sizings appear. And how to actually do it, how to group up those sizing profiles. First, you have to find where a Simple Preflop was installed on your computer. To do so, right-click on the Simple Preflop shortcut on your desktop and click Open File Location. Then you see different folders here, and the folder that we actually want is this one, Bet Sizings. Open it. And now all you have to do is to create a folder, name it the way you want, like 4-bet pot here. You can call it 3-bet pot or single race pots, whatever. And then you move all the bet sizing preset files that you want to group up in this folder. You cut it from the bet sizing folder and then you paste it to this new folder that you've created. Okay, now after we've put in all these text sizes, all these sizing strategies and all the blinds and entities, we have to click Apply for Simple Preflop to create a game tree. Well, if you don't want to change anything, you can click Apply the first thing after you open the program, but yeah. And here in this little box on the left, we have Preflop actions. So if we want to change anything in Preflop action, we're gonna do it right here. Then if you want to go back and change some things in the like stack sizes or bet sizing strategies, whatever, you can click Clear right here and you get back to editing. You can change blinds, you can change entities, you can change stack sizes, number of players, bet sizing strategies, whatever. And also, if we click on this little arrow next to Apply, we can find different apply options. First one, Postflop check. If we click it, we get a game tree according to our settings, but every postflop action for every player is check. So if we pick a node where small blind limps and big blind checks, then postflop we see nothing but checks for both players. Check, flop, check, turn, and yeah, guess what? Check, river. The idea is that if you created a large game tree, for example, for 9 players, with decent stacks like 50 BBs plus, then first of all it will take some time to generate this tree, and second, if you want to change something in this tree, it would also take quite some time. Like if you want to change sizings, or if you want to add a 3-bet option, whatever. For example, if you want to add a sizing like this one, 500 chips, you see it happens instantly because we have quite a simple tree, like 12 blinds for each player. But if the tree is more complex, if we have like 9 players with 50 blinds, then adding a sizing won't be so quick. It will take some time. Because a Simple Preflop not only has to add this one sizing, the program has to account for every action that follows this sizing. Like all the 4-bet options for players, all the calling options, everything. And also, if we don't have this check option for postflop, the program has to account for every postflop action. So yeah, you can either work with the complete tree and wait for some time if you have to make any changes, or you can go with this check option that you can find here in this little drop-down list. And yeah, it would be much quicker. But of course, then you have to change strategies for the postflop. You have to change sizings because you don't want players to just check down. And you can do it either manually for every street, like you can go here, click Rebuild Branch, and there you go. Or you can do it for every street at once. To do so, you go here, right-click, and you click Rebuild Postflop Branches. This way you just apply all the sizing profiles that you've created before here in the top right to every street and every player. Let's check it. Let's go here, button opens, small blind folds, big blind calls, and there you go. We have all these sizing options, not only checks. Okay, next one in this little drop-down list is anti-Holdem. Well, basically it goes for some specific anti-games. For example, you can find those in GG Poker. It could be a situation when we have 0 small blind, big blind 1 and anti-1. This someone needs to calculate for those spots, and yeah. Okay, it was a poor choice of inputs. I went with a big blind of 1 and stacks of 1000 and something, so it was like huge stacks, and it took forever to calculate. So yeah, this one goes much quicker. And in this case, program considers button as the big blind, and then every other position is button plus 1, button plus 2, and so on. Anyways, in the end, we can get a game tree for this kind of spots too. Then we have anti-Holdem, a postflop check. Well, basically it's the same postflop check, but for these specific anti-spots. And finally, we can calculate a game tree with a straddle. Well, this one is quite intuitive, but anyway, we'll go through. The only thing that we have to input the amount of straddle. Well, let's make it 2 BBs. And one little thing, the straddle will only be assigned to the very first player after the big blind. But the player who acts after the straddle guy, he can raise to 300. We see here hijack in this example. So yeah. And the very last option is with straddle postflop check. Again, the same thing, but with only checks postflop. Or just a simplified postflop tree. Okay, let's get back to the basic game tree with no straddle and no simplifications. Okay, after clicking apply, we get a game tree, and yeah, we can just go with it, with the one that that has been created. But usually it's better to check out all the nodes, check out sizings and stuff. And at the very top, in the root of our game tree, we see dead money. Dead money 75 in this case, and we can choose how program will show the amount of dead money. It could be the way that it is right now, so just the total amount of dead money in the pot, or we can right click here and then click include ante. This way the ante will be added to the bet sizings. Yeah, here you can see UTG now raises not 200 chips but 212.5. So with ante included, well, maybe someone needs this option. I prefer the default one, as it usually is at the table. We have this dead money separately somewhere on the table, yeah. Okay, what else do we have here? First we can add node. So we can work with the tree that the program has created for us, or we can change it, adjust it the way we want. And if we click add node at the very top, we are offered to add another bet sizing for UTG player. Well, for example, if we don't want him to only min raise, if we want to have an option of raising 3x, we can add this sizing here. We can again either manually type in the amount or use these little arrows, but it's yeah, it takes some time. Better to just type in. And yeah, there it is, our new sizing for UTG player. And yeah, we can add more sizings if you want to, like that. Next we have add call. Well, for this particular branch, it means open limp for UTG player. But if you want an option to call for our player at some point, we can add it here. For UTG, as I said, it just added a limping option and all the branches inside all the nodes for every player after UTG limps. Of course, you can delete every node that you want. You right click on it and then choose delete node. Very easy. But let's get back to the root of the tree, and next up here is rounding. Well, this is the rounding of strategy to a certain amount. Well, this means that if you choose this option, if you prefer to round strategy to some amount, then you will get the simplified version of this game tree. So the result will not be as precise, but it will be more simplified, and maybe this way it will be easier for you to study or to remember the strategy. Okay, next include entities. This one we've covered. Go next, rebuild branch. Well, this one rebuilds the whole branch, well, in this case for preflop only. According to the sizings you've input here in the top right. And for example, if you want to change those sizings, if you change sizing profiles, for example, for some players, then you have to rebuild the branch for those new sizings to apply. And this goes for every player and every node based on sizings that you've chosen here in the top right. And if we click rebuild branch, we see a new strategy for UTG player because we have changed it here before. We see only two sizings. Actually, they are the same, so it's just one sizing, which is mean raise. And yeah, we see only mean raise. And for those players that we haven't changed anything in terms of sizing strategies, nothing changes. And if you want to bring everything back, you just go for the previous settings and then you rebuild the branch again. And one thing I want to point out here, if you change something manually here in the tree, like you add some sizings for a certain player and then you rebuild the branch, everything you did in here will disappear. It will be brought back to the basic settings. Then rebuild postflop branches. Well, this one I showed you already a little bit, but basically we use this one if we want to change sizings for all the players, for all the postflop actions. If you chose postflop check option previously and now you adjusted the tree, preflop tree the way you want it, and now you want to add those postflop sizings, you can use this option, rebuild postflop branches. And this includes every possible postflop branch, so for 3-bet scenarios, 4-bet scenarios, single raise spots, whatever. Everything will be rebuilt according to sizing profiles that you input here in the top right. Okay, next we have plain view. Well, this one we actually need for the trees that are already calculated, and yeah, why not? Let's talk about it right now. Well, let me open a tree that is already calculated. Usually we see the ranges here in the top left, like this, and we only see ranges for the player that we've selected here, like this one for UTG, this one for hijack, and this is the hijack reaction for UTG raise. But we can use this very handy, actually, plain view option to see ranges for a few players at once. If we click plain view on the root of the game tree, then we see raise first in strategies for every player. But if you click here on UTG bet, and if you click here on UTG raise, then we see strategies of every player against this race. And we can go on and on. For example, if we choose an option where UTG raises and hijack calls, then we see squeezing strategies for every player. Squeeze and overcall. And of course we can do this for every node of the game tree. Hijack raise, button raise, and of course there are only two players left after button open shoves, so we see their reaction to his shove. And if you want to see how big blind should play after a small blind calls this open shove, then we go here, we choose small blind call, and there it is. This is how big blind plays after button shoves and small blind calls. Okay, this was plain view, and we go on. The last one we have here is lock inside strategies. This way we can lock all the strategies inside a certain node, inside a certain branch. If we do this for the root branch, then we lock all the strategies. The idea is if we want to change some player's strategy and keep all the other strategies intact, then we lock all the strategies, we unlock a certain one, and we change it the way we want. And of course we can also unlock all the strategies. Okay, we went through all the options for the root branch, root node. But now let's go through the options for other branches, and again we can call for those options by right-clicking on a certain node. Okay, if we right-click on this UGG bet 200 option, first we have an option to edit strategy. If we click this one, a window pops up where we can edit the strategy the way we want. And basically we can either erase everything and create our own strategy manually, which takes quite some time, or we can edit something in the strategy that was calculated by Simple Preflop. Okay, there's a lot of things going on here, and let's go through them one by one. First, we have this little matrix right here, and basically this is a visualization of our strategy. We can edit strategy right here. If we left click on a certain hand, we add full weight to this hand, all the combos, and we can draw like this, moving cursor from side to side. And if we right click on a hand, we exclude all the combos from our range. Then we have this little filter right here, and we have two buttons on the top, check and empty. Check means check all the boxes down below, and empty means clear all the boxes, check boxes. But to be clear, this is just a visual filter. By checking or unchecking some of those boxes, we do not change the range. We just change the hands that we see in this little matrix on the left. If we want to actually change the range, we can either do this left click, right click thing, or we can left click, right click on the row to include or exclude all the combos in this row or column. And again, if we left click, we add all the combos. If we right click, we exclude all the combos from this column in this case. And if you want to include or exclude all the combos possible, we can just left or right click here on the top left cell of the matrix. Next, we of course can only edit a certain action like fold, bet small, bet big. We see all of this here in the top right. And if we want to edit a certain action, we just left click on it, and then we work with the matrix. So if we want to edit our all-in range, we left click here, and then we work with the matrix. Let's pick some hands, so just for the sake of it, hands that we want to shove as an example. And now we have shoving range, we have folding range, and if we want to apply this strategy, we click apply, and there we go, we have a range that we just created. But of course we can do more. We don't want to just either include all the combos or exclude them. We want to add weights to certain hands. And if we want a certain weight for some hands, let's for example edit small raising range, we can work with this little panel right here. Okay, what options do we have? First, we can click this little empty button. Well, this is basically erasing hands, like 0%, 0 weight. So if we choose this and then we left click on hands in the matrix, they will be excluded from the range completely. Well, basically the same as if we right click on it. Then we of course can choose some in-between weights. We can input weight manually using keyboard, or we can use arrows again, but it takes quite some time. Okay, 53%. Well, let's say we want some hands to be included in this range with 53% frequency. This is how we do it. And yeah, when we go with some weight for a certain hand, 6 deuce suited for example, then yeah, we have 53% for the small raise. But as for the other ranges, this combo will be just 53% less. Like it was 100% fold and 0 shove, and now it's 47% fold. But this one was pretty simple. 100, 0, then we take 53%, 47% left, very easy, very straightforward. But if we take some complicated strategy, and we also set a weight of 53% for a 6 deuce suited, then for the other two ranges the weight will be split evenly. And in many cases this is not what we actually want. So it's not that easy to edit those things. But there is a new, more appealing edit mode that was introduced in a Simple Preflop quite recently, but we'll get to it later in this video. Now get back to this window. Okay, then we have full, which basically sets the weight to 100%, empty as I said before 0, and yeah, in this case both left and right clicks will do the same, which is excluding all the combos from the range. And the filters, as I said, they only used as a visual cue. I mean, you can just select all the overpairs in your range, but it will not change anything in terms of your strategy. If you want to change the strategy, you have to actually pick a weight and then use it on a combo. Like if we change here 8s, 9s and 7s to 100%, it will apply to our strategy. Then we can also filter for certain suits. We can do it manually. Right here we have 8 buttons for the suits, or we can do it here automatically. Like here, all hearts, all diamonds, all spades, and let me explain what all of this means. First, let's delete one node from UTG preflop strategy. Let's make it either a shove or fold, and back to editing this strategy. First, let's make him a fold 100%, and then let's assume that we want to shove only certain combos with certain suits. And here the left column means the suit of the higher card in our hand, and the right column is for the lower card in our hand. Then we can see that all the buttons are active now. Well, the button is active when it has this light blue color. When we deactivate the button, then it turns, gray or blank or whatever. And if we want to activate or deactivate the button, the only thing we have to do is to click on it. And let's do this. I deactivated 3 buttons, and let me explain what it means. It means that we only leave combos with high card of hearts and any other suit for the low card. Now if we select some offsuit hands, even with 100 weight, and we click apply, we see that most of the range is folding, which is what we did exactly. And if we take a look at combos, we see that ace king is only shoving when we have ace of hearts. And this is also what we did, selecting only combos with high card of hearts. So yeah, this way we can pick combos with certain suits. And if we go back to edit strategy, yeah, here we can for example go for only diamond combos. And yeah, just like that, we see all the offsuit combos disappear because it is impossible to have 2 diamonds with offsuit combo, and we have only diamond combos left. So yeah, we pick suits, then we use left click in our matrix to select hands. And yeah, if we take a look here at this little window, we see only diamond combos. Jack 10 of diamonds 100%, Jack 10 of hearts, spades and clubs 0%. So if you go for the folding range, we see 100% of those combos. Yeah. And yeah, we can sort those combos by plate percentage, absolute weight, or EV. Okay, what else we have left here in this edit strategy window? Oh, you can also save the ranges if you want to. So you've created a range for a certain spot and you want to save this range. First of all, we have a text version of our range right here. You can copy it anytime, just click copy right here on the right, and it is copied to clipboard. Then you can paste it in another program, for example, if you want to, if you need to. Also, you can paste range in here, like from some other spot in Simple Preflop, or from other program again, like if you have a range from some different calculator, GTO calculator, you can paste it here. And finally, you can save this range in a file. And of course, there is a separate folder for the ranges. Call the range whatever you want, or you can overwrite the older range, for example, older file. And also you can get quick access to this range right here in this little window. All the ranges that you save in this folder, ranges, will be displayed here. So you can quickly get access to them. So yeah, very handy, and this is about it, I guess, with this window. What do we have left? Oh, this little button around absolute copy. Well, this way you can copy rounded frequencies. And yeah, this is it for this window. Next option we have is edit node strategies, and this is what I was talking about before when I said that there is a new feature that actually helps with those weights. When you, for example, have like 3 or even 4 or 5 maybe options for a certain node, and you want to distribute weights of a certain hand for different ranges. Okay, edit node strategies. Well, basically, this is the same as edit strategies. Only here, if you want to distribute weights across multiple ranges, it is much easier to do. You see this little line here with 3 colors, because we initially have 3 options, fold, small bet, and shove. And this is exactly how we can easily and quickly distribute frequencies across all 3 ranges. Okay, if you want a certain hand to fold, let's say 20%, and again, we can either move it like that, or we can click this little minus and plus buttons. So yeah, if you want a certain hand or a certain group of hands to fold 20%, small raise, this little green bar here, let's say 42%, and shove 38%. That's all we have left. Then you set it like this, and now we don't have to jump across the ranges here in the top right. We just select the hands we want to have this frequency distribution by left clicking on them. Yeah, as you see, we have the frequencies we were looking for. And if you don't want a certain hand to mix all 3 options, if you want it to either a small raise or shove, then you just move this red bar all the way to the left. And now you have 2 options. Well, let's say we want a small bet 35% and shove 65%. This is how we do it. And yeah, again, left click on the hands we are interested in. And if you want to bring back fold, if you want to bring back this little red bar, we just move it here like this. And if you want, for example, a certain hand to fold 100%, we just move this bar all the way to the right and left click on the hands in the matrix. Same goes for the other options like small bet. Anyway, you see that this way it is much more handy in terms of weight distribution. And of course, it works the same with suits and filters. And again, I'm repeating myself, but filters do not change the actual strategy. It is just a visual thing. We can pick a certain group of hands, like ace highs and king highs, and then change the strategy for those hands. And one more time, by filtering hands, you change nothing in your strategy. You can only change it in the matrix. And yeah, we can apply it, and now we see it here. Alright, next we have unlock strategy. This says for itself, if we locked strategy previously, we can click unlock strategies, and there you go. If you want to recalculate this strategy optimally, then we have to unlock it. Next, copy strategy. Well, this is the same as copying strategy from the edit strategy window. So you just copy the strategy in text format. This goes for this certain range of 9.92%. And then we can paste it in another program or in a text file. Copy absolute strategy. Well, this copies strategy with absolute weights. Copy node strategy, well, this way we copy the strategy of the whole node. Next, paste strategy, we can paste strategy that we've copied before from another program maybe. For example, if like on hijack there was a strategy where we shove 100%, then we can copy this strategy and paste it in here for our UTG shove. So yeah, if we want to, we can copy strategies from one node to another, and yeah, sometimes it is very helpful. So I took a strategy from here, hijack shove, and pasted it here, UTG shove. Okay, let's unlock those. Next we have edit node. This one allows us to edit a certain node, a certain branch. So for example, here we have a game tree that was built based on those inputs in the top right. And if we want, for example, to change sizing in this node without changing the bed sizing profiles, we just click Edit Node and pick a value that we want. Let's, for example, make it 250, 2.5 big blinds. Again, we can either input manually or we can use this little scroll or whatever you want. And here it is, we have 250 instead of 200, and we can change any node anytime we want, or we can add a new node, but I showed you already how to do that. Okay, next we have delete node. This one is very easy. Let's just, for the sake of example, add another one, like 300, make it 300 bet. And if we think that we don't need this 2.5 big blind bet anymore, then we right click on it, click delete node, and this is it. Okay, next we have cut parent nodes. This one basically cuts all the nodes that lead to this one. And of course, to show how this one works, we need to go deeper in the tree. Okay, for example, we want to work with small blind versus big blind spot only. And we don't need actually other parts of this tree, like with UTG raise, hijack raise, and so on. Okay, now if we want to work specifically with small blind versus big blind spot, we have to find the root for this part of the tree, and the root is button fold right here, because small blind action starts right after button folds. We right click on it and choose cut parent nodes. Now all the branches that do not lead to this spot where button folds will be removed. As you can see, we don't have any UTG raises anymore. Then if UTG folds, then no hijack raises and so on. And we only use it to simplify the tree and exclude all the branches that we are not interested in. It saves quite some time and RAM. And if you want to bring this whole thing back, we just rebuild the branch, and this is it. Next we have rebuild branch again. Well, if we use rebuild branch for the root node, then we rebuild basically the whole tree. But if we made some mistakes in some part of the tree, like for example, we somehow deleted button small bled and button shove, and if we want to bring everything back, if we want to rebuild this part of the tree, this branch, after cutoff folds and button takes action, then we choose the root node for this branch, which is the cutoff fold. We right click on it, we rebuild the branch, and everything will be rebuilt with the strategy, with the betting sizes and so on of our first inputs. Next we have rebuild postflop branches. Well, this one also rebuilds all the postflop branches for a certain node. Again, according to the initial strategy and initial sizing profiles. Next, plain view. This one we covered, and lock inside strategies. This one locks all the strategies inside a certain branch. For example, if we pick cutoff fold and click lock inside strategies, everything that branches out from this point will be locked. Well, in this case, nothing is calculated, so we don't really care about node locking. But if we open a calculated tree and we use this lock inside a strategist feature, then everything that goes after UTG fold is going to be locked. Then if in this little preflop window, if we choose a node that actually completes preflop action, well, for example, button raises 200, small blind folds, and big blind calls, then the next window activates, which represents our flop actions. And besides that, if we right-click on the node that closes the preflop action, we will see some new options in this little pop-up menu. Okay, first we have Open Postflop in Simple Postflop or SPF. Well, this one is very easy. When we choose this option, this certain spot, in this case button min raises and small blind folds, big blind calls, then if you choose this option, the whole thing will be opened in Simple Postflop. If you have it on your computer, of course. And it could be anything, actually. It could be a single raise pot, it could be a 3-bet pot, 4-bet pot, 5-bet pot, whatever. The only thing, it has to be a heads-up pot. But if you want to analyze a multi-way spot, I mean a 3-way spot, then, for example, well, let's choose this spot here. For example, button raises, small blind calls, and big blind overcalls. Then we can open it in a simple 3-way, if you have it on your computer. And this game tree will be transferred to simple 3-way with all the sizings and stack sizes and stuff, and you can analyze it there. So you don't have to input all of that manually in simple 3-way or Simple Postflop. And it's actually quite handy. One more thing about how we can actually edit the strategy. As I said before, if we go to the node that concludes the preflop action, then we get access to the flop action window. And here, if we go to the node that concludes the flop action, then we get access to the turn window. And same for a river action window. First of all, this way we can take a look at our post-flop strategy, and if we want to change something before working with Simple Postflop or Simple 3-way, we can actually change it right here. Again, in terms of editing the strategy, we can do everything that we were able to preflop. We can add nodes, we can do it manually, I mean we can input the sizing manually, or we can use the scroll, this little blue scroll right here. Yeah, this one. It's very useful if you want to quickly add all-in sizing. And we can rebuild branch here, which means that we go to the settings, the basic inputs, which are again the sizing profiles we've input right here in the top right. This is our sort of default strategy, and when we click rebuild branch, we go back to this default strategy. If you want, for example, to work with 4-bet pot and you want special sizings, which are usually quite small, you choose here 4-bet pot sizings, and then you rebuild the branch, and here nothing changed pretty much, but because we already use min bet, and you can bet less than a min bet. But yeah, the idea is that when you change your default sizing, default strategies at the top right, and then you use rebuild branch for any part of the game tree, it will all change to the sizing profiles that you've picked. Or you can do it all manually down here. It is also important to note that the more sizings, the more nodes you have for every part of the game tree, the more time it will take for a program to calculate the solution. So yeah, don't go crazy with the number of sizings. In some cases, you can actually use one sizing maybe for a certain node, for a certain part of the game tree. But yeah, the idea is to not go overboard. Okay, after we went through every part of the game tree and we think that everything is cool, everything just the way we want it to be, we can now go to the final step, which is the calculation. When you click this little button which says calculate, if you run the program for the very first time, if you run the calculations for the very first time, you'll see this little window with different boards which Simple Preflop is going to use to do the calculations. So yeah, if you see it, don't be afraid, it's okay, it's normal, it just happened once when you calculate game tree for the very first time, and then you will never see it again. And yeah, don't try to do anything, don't try to close the window, just wait for some time and it's gonna be alright. And when you start the calculations for the second time and all the times followed, after clicking calculate button, you will see this little window. And let's go through everything that we have here. We have some settings for every street, flop, turn and river. And basically here we choose the type of algorithm that a program will use to do the estimations. Previously we used the bucketing algorithm, where all the hands categories were sorted in so-called buckets according to their equity. So for buckets, it's equity against 100% range. For sub-buckets, equity against 200% ranges, and so on. I don't really think that you are very interested in those things. And also we can pick here a certain set of textures for every street again. If we pick perfect as it is for the flop, it means a separate clusterization for every board. If we go small or large, that means either a small amount of boards, which a program can go through quite quickly, or a large amount of boards, which will take more time, of course. And of course, the more textures we have to go through, the more time and RAM it will require. For example, if we go perfect large, it requires 70 GBs RAM, and of course a lot of time. But if we go perfect small, which is sort of the default settings, we see 6.4 GBs. So yeah, if you use this old bucketing algorithm, then the number of textures is very important, of course. That is required for the calculations and the time it will take. But lately, Simple Preflop team came up with a new algorithm, which doesn't have anything to do with the number of textures. In this algorithm, everything is optimized much better, and it actually requires much less RAM for the calculations. And in the end, it is basically the perfect balance of time you spend for the calculations and the precision of the results. To activate this new algorithm, you have to download those buckets. I have them downloaded already, of course. As a default, you will have this 30 and 4, 30 and 1 buckets, which are the old ones. And if you want to download new ones, you click this little plus button, and you can either input buckets and sub-buckets manually, or you can download buckets. To do so, you click here, and then you choose what amount of buckets you want. Could be 1,000, 5,000, or 10,000. But you actually have to do it for each street individually. So you download one for the flop, for the turn, and for the river. And again, there are no textures for those new optimized buckets. So yeah, if you don't want to bother and if you want everything to be easier, you just download those new buckets and go on with it. I myself always use those new ones. They are amazing. So yeah, we download one for the flop, then we do the same for the turn and river. As a default, Simple Preflop team recommends using at least 1,000 buckets for the flop, then 10,000 for the turn and 10,000 for the river. You can experiment with it, you can go bigger, smaller, and of course the more you go, the more it will take in terms of time and RAM, so take it into consideration. But in the end, of course, it's all up to you. Maybe you want more precision and you don't really care about time or RAM, or maybe you just want to go quicker, see some key points and move on. Sometimes it's okay to sacrifice precision for time, but yeah, again, as I said, it's all up to you. And then again, we don't need textures for this new algorithm, so we don't get to choose any. Next, again, we can choose the algorithm of calculation. We have two options, ESCFR and CSCFR. I recommend to use the one that you have by default. Yeah, I would recommend you to ignore this one. Next, threads. Well, this is the number of threads your computer will use to calculate this game tree. And of course, this number is limited to the actual number of cores of threads on your PC. For example, if you have a quad-core processor with 8 threads, then the maximum amount of threads is 8. Simple as that. And if you use all 8 threads for this calculation, then you have to realize that you will not be able to do anything else on your computer, or you can, but it will lag so hard. So if you want your computer to calculate this game tree, but at the same time you want to watch a show or surf the web, you just leave like 2 threads free. So instead of 8, go with 6, and it will be enough. And again, it's totally up to you. You know how the correlation works. The more threads you use, the quicker the game tree will be calculated. But also the less power you have for yourself if you want to surf a web or watch a movie or whatever. And the less you use, the more opportunities you have with your computer, but the more time it will take for the calculations. Next, the number of iterations. And this number actually is not very important. What we are really interested in is this iterations to nodes ratio. And according to guys from Simple Preflop, this number should be around 100. So in this case, 27,000 iterations is clearly too many. So let's make it less. 5,000 brings us to 111. Let's make it 4,500 and yeah, bingo. And again, this one is not so important. I mean, you don't have to follow this rule strictly. You don't have to make this ratio of 100 every time. And if the game tree is too complex, then you can make it less, so it won't take forever to calculate. And also some overall strategies you can follow even with low ratio of iterations per nodes. So if you want just the overall idea of how the strategy should look like, then you can go with much less iterations. Number of iterations does not affect RAM at all, because number of iterations only affects time. This is the number of times we will do something over and over. So RAM is only affected by these settings. And of course, the more times we go over one spot, the more iterations we have, the more precise the results that we get. If the game tree is quite small, quite simple, then you go with like, I don't know, 10,000 iterations, 223 ratio, iterations to nodes. It won't take much more time, but the solution will be more precise. But if the tree is quite complex, then you go with like 1,000 and ratio of 22, just so you don't have to wait for weeks. And as always, in the end, it's up to you. Then we have save strategy after, and this is percentage value. You can choose the number either with little arrows or you can type in manually. And basically it means that the strategy, the whole calculations will be saved only after a certain percentage of this calculation is done. Why do we need to do this? Well, we don't want to take into account the very first estimations, which are not really close to the result we are looking for. So for Simple Preflop, to ignore this first not very precise results, we set the percentage of calculation the program can then skip. Well, usually I set it to about 10 or 15%, and that's enough. Next, this little checkbox save post-flop frequencies. So we either save them or not. And we can see those frequencies right here in the post-flop section, flop, turn, and river. We will see frequencies next to the strategic option. Like for example, small blind check 85%, small bet 10%, big bet 5%, like that. So yeah, if you want to see the frequencies here, you just check this checkbox. And next we have save strategy every percentage value. Well, this one basically means how often the program will save this little backup file of our strategy. For example, if the program calculated 14% total, and then, I don't know, electricity shut down and your computer turned off, then the first 10% of this calculation will be saved thanks to this little backup. And there's a special folder for those backup files, Simple Preflop Holdem / autosave. And there we have the autosaves for different parts of the calculation, like 10, 20, 30, and so on. So yeah, if it calculated 94% or total, then after a reboot or whatever happened to your computer, you can start again from 90% of calculations. So yeah, very helpful. And you can choose whatever folder you want where program will keep those backup files. But as the default, as I said, it is Simple Preflop Holdem / autosave. But yeah, you can go for any folder you like, and all the files, all the autosaves will be there. And finally, we have three types of payouts. First type is ChipEV, well, basically the main type where we calculate only chip's value. Then we have ICM mode, which is designed for the tournament games. And if you choose it, then you have to input the payout structure. It could be the actual amount in dollars, it could be percentage, whatever. Like, I don't know, 50, 30, 20 for a typical SNG tournament. Or it could be actual dollars, like 25,000, 50,000, and so on. And also, if you want to calculate the results for a tournament with a knockout structure, and if you want to create a model of bounty tournament or knockout tournament, then you have to again first input the payout structure. Then you have to check this little checkbox down here, knockout instant bounty percentage, and set the percentage of instant bounty. If it is a progressive knockout tournament, then the percentage is 50. If it's a regular knockout tournament, which are basically out of play right now, then we type 100, but let's go with 50. This is a typical thing for the modern knockout tournaments, which most of them are actually progressive knockouts. Next, we go to the bounty tab. And here we enter bounties for every player. Here in this model we have 6 players, so it's 6 for 10 players. It would be 10. Yeah, you get the idea. The only thing is that you have to enter the whole bounty, because when you play progressive knockouts on stars, for example, you only see the half of player's bounty, the amount that you can actually get. And yeah, you have to multiply it by 2 when entering here, or you can copy the amount from hand histories. But yeah, if you see 25 above the player's avatar in game, then you have to input 50 here. So if you play 50 plus 50 plus 9 tournament on stars, then again you have to input 50 here, because you have to input the bounty, the whole bounty, not just the half that you see in game. Anyway, you enter all the bounties and then click OK. And finally we have the third payout type, which is rake. This one pretty intuitive. You set rake percentage, you set rake cap. If there's a preflop rake from pot, then you check this box and set the amount. And then again, when we're done, we click OK button and the calculation starts. During the calculation process, we can see this little window, and there are some options here again, and let's go through them. First, we have hide, just to hide this window from the screen, and if you want to bring it back, we double click on it. Then we have a pause button. Well, right here we see resume because I already paused it. Anyway, when we pause the whole thing, the process stops, but it also frees the processor, so we can use it to the full capacity. We can even open a simple preflop one more time and create new game tree and start calculating it. Next, when the process is active, we have this dump button. This one allows us to save the whole calculation process at one point, and if we want to, we can stop it right there and then resume from this very moment when we clicked the dump button. For example, you started calculating something before session and then the process went too long. You realize that you have no more time for this, you have to play. Then you click dump, you make this little backup file, and you get back to calculations when you are able to. And how to resume the calculation after you dumped it, you have to do certain things. I'll show you later how. And yeah, you can bring back the calculations from the moment where you stopped. Okay, let's try it. I click dump. Now we have the opportunity to create this little backup file. We have to pick a name, whatever. Let's make it 123. And we click save. Now we can just stop this simulation. Now let's close the Simple Preflop, then reopen it, so it feels more realistic. And now we go to File, Open Dump. And now all we have to do is pick our little backup file. Now the program has to reopen it, it will take some time, and it will continue calculation from the moment we used this little dump feature. So if you have only one PC for everything, you can pause the calculations this way and proceed in parts. If you need a break, not a problem, use dump function, then bring it back. So yeah, very, very useful. When the calculations are done, you can see the results right here. You have all the strategies, all the frequencies for every node, every player, every option. And if we want, for example, to see a small blind versus big blind strategy, we go to a certain node, which is button fold in this case. And if you want to see a big blind's reaction to a small blind limp, we choose a small blind call and then a big blind bet. So yeah, if you want to see a strategy of a certain player, we either find him here in this tree, or we can use plain view. Here we see a few strategies at once, and we can choose the spot right here on the left. Also, we can still edit strategy, we can lock strategy, we can change frequencies the way we want and then lock it and then recalculate it. So yeah, and we should probably go through all the options in this little file menu. First open, here we can open some spots that were already calculated. So yeah, if you've calculated A3 and then you saved the calculation, you can open it whenever you want. Then we have a save option, which is logical. If we have a calculation, we can save it at any point. So yeah, if you have a model and you've calculated it, you can save it here. And this is how you do it. You just pick a name, you save it, very easy. Then we have license. Well, when you buy a product, you have to enter your license key and yeah, you do it here. Then we have jobs. We'll talk about it in a moment. Update, here we can check it out if there's a new version that we can update to. About is about the program and exit is exit. Okay, now let's talk about this jobs button. So if we want a calculation, we just click on calculate and we see this little pop-up window. But if we click on this little arrow next to calculate, we see a button add job. We do this if we want to use this model as a template. We don't want to calculate it right now, but we want to use it as a template later. If you have a server where we can calculate it much faster, for example, or if you want to do it on other computer, whatever. The pop-up window is absolutely the same. We choose the algorithms, we choose buckets, just as we did for the straightforward calculation. Everything the same, threads, iterations, GPV, ICM, whatever. The only difference is that when we click OK, the calculation does not start. Instead, we have to choose a name for our job, for our template. Let's name it, well, I don't know, test job. Then we click OK, and we have this little window that says that the test job was successfully saved. Now what do we do to open job? We click File Jobs or Shift plus J, and we see that test job is here, so everything's fine. Beside the pre-made jobs, we have this one that we've actually created. And yeah, let's go through all the options in this window. First, rename. Well, you don't have to be a genius to realize what that means. This way we can rename the job, this first column, name, test job. We can change it to whatever. Let's make it test job 1, 2, 3, and just for the sake of it. Next we have delete. This is how we delete the job if we don't want it anymore. There are actually two ways of deleting the job. We can delete it from here, from this window, or we can find it in the Simple Preflop folder and delete it manually. Then we can move this job to input, output, or error. There are three folders: input, output, and error. Input is the folder where all the templates get in the first place. Then output is the folder where all the calculated ones get. And finally, error is the folder where all the files that weren't calculated properly get. If some error during the calculations occur, then this file gets there. Could be that we have 4 files, 3 of them calculated well, we don't have enough RAM for the 4th one, and the program moves it to the error folder. Okay, what else do we have here? Again, we have this checkbox save strategy every percentage. Well, just like in the calculate menu, if we want the program to backup the calculations every, for example, 10%, then we check this box. And we can pick a folder if we want to. And yeah, it could be every 10%, every 20%, every 25%, or no backups at all. Again, move to input, output, error. We can any job, any file, move to one of those 3 folders. Why do you need to move those files from folder to folder? Well, for example, if you have 4 jobs open here, and you only want to calculate one of those 4, then you just select 3 ones that you are not interested in calculating right now and move to error. And then Simple Preflop will just ignore those, meaning that when you click Run Calculate at the top, the only job that will be actually calculated is this one in input folder. If there are, for example, 10 files and all of them are in the input folder, then the program will just calculate all of those one by one. And if you want it to calculate certain jobs, then yeah, you use folders. I mean, you use this move to error button. And finally, edit configuration. Why do we need it? Well, for example, if I created this template at home on my home PC, when I have a quad-core processor with only 8 threads, but I'm actually going to calculate this template on the server with 30 threads. Then when you move it on server, you open this jobs window, you go to edit config, and you change the number of threads. And yeah, you can change anything you want here. Could be save strategy after, could be payout type, anything. And yeah, after you change it, you click OK or cancel if you want to cancel all the changes. Okay, this will do it. And yeah, if you want to run the calculation of all the jobs, you click Run Calculate. The program will start calculating all the jobs one by one, and then again you can pause it, you can dump it, you can stop it, just like with the regular calculation. Also, we should probably talk a little bit about this display menu, although it's all very intuitive and easy to understand, but yeah, let's go through it anyways. We can change the font, we can go back to default anytime we want, and we can pick the font of our liking. On just a standard font menu, size, boldness, strikeout, underline, and then if you choose what you like, click OK, or if you want to cancel it, cancel. Then we have matrix settings, font color, line color, or again we can go back to default. Scale, well, this is basically the scale of the window, if you want everything to be a little bit bigger visually. And finally we can choose a dark theme. Also, even if you don't have a license, you can build a tree and check out how much RAM it is required to calculate this tree with certain settings. This way you can estimate if your PC is able to actually calculate this tree, or you need something more powerful. Also, there's this little panel that is only available when you have calculated the tree. And what do we have here? We have the pot size, we have stack sizes of every player, or we can change it to Nash EVs. Next, we can choose the weight display right here. First option that we have is non-weight. Well, in this case, the hands will be displayed binary. In the matrix, either there are some combos of a hand or there are not. Even if there's only 1% of a certain hand, the cell will be in full color. So yeah, this is a very simplified way of presenting weights, just to see if there are any combos of the hand or not. Then if you want more clarity in terms of weights, we can go with absolute weight. In this case, if we reach a certain note with a certain percentage of combos of a hand, like, I don't know, 15% of ace-king combos, only 15% of this cell will be colored, and then it will be split between the actions. And finally, we have this in-between option, which is normalize weight. In this case, if we reach a certain note with different hands of different frequencies, the one that we reach the most, with the most frequency, will be colored completely, I mean the whole cell. And the rest will be colored in proportion to this most frequent hand. And which one to choose, it's up to you, the one that suits you more. And the last one, strategy show, we can choose here between a strategy show, plate show, and EV show. When we go with a strategy show, we see all the strategy options. Blue hands are small bets, red hands are folds, and green are big bets. And with some hands we mix between different options. If we go with plate show, then we only see hands that we actually play in a certain branch. Like here we chose bet small, and we see all those hands. If we go with bet big, we see those hands, and so on. We only see the hands that actually get into this range that we selected at the bottom. Now we choose a big bet, and again we see all the hands that are played, and if we go with fold, same thing. And finally, EV show, we see the EVs of each hand. Well, of course, folds always have 0 EV, so let's choose small bet, and here we see EVs of each hand. And same goes for bet big and every node of the tree. Also, we haven't actually talked about this combos window right here. When we choose a certain node in the game tree, let's make it small blind call here. We see all the combos. Well, first of all, we see the combos of a hand that we have selected here in the matrix. If we select ace-9 suited, first we see the cards here. Well, suited only 4 combos. If we go with offsuit, there will be more, 16. Next column is absolute weight. Well, since small blind here is first to act, he has all the combos of this hand. And yeah, we can sort those combos by one of 3 parameters. Click here on the top of the column and you will sort all the combos by this absolute weight, in this case, from big to small or from small to big, according to this little arrow at the very top. Okay, next column is played percentage. So this is basically how often this hand, this combo, gets in this branch. In this case, the branch is a small blind call. So 58% of those combos we open limp in the small blind. And if we click fold, for example, instead of call, we see pretty much 0% because we never fold this combo pre-flop if we are the first to act. Then if we choose raise all in, we see 41% shoves. And yeah, here in the little window lower, we see all the options for a certain combo. For example, if we choose ace-9 of hearts, we see that we call it 58%, we shove it 41%, and we see the EV. And yeah, the first column here at the top is EV. And yeah, of course, in this case, when we change the combo, nothing changes in the lower window because these combos are identical. They all suited, and when we change the suit, nothing changes. And finally, let's take a look how this round feature works for a calculated tree. We right-click on this very root of the game tree, we go to round, and if you go for 100%, we see a lot of difference in player strategy. Now, instead of all these mixes and weights, we have a binary strategy. We either raise or fold or shove. If you want to get everything back to how it was, we click round none. And a few words about ranges here at the top right. If you want to calculate a complete tree, with every player having an opportunity to participate in the game, then of course we leave 100% for every player. But for example, if you want a simplified spot where UTG always folds, then it's not very accurate to leave 100% of hands for the UTG player. Because if he folds, then we actually know that he doesn't have aces, for example, or any other strong hand that he will always play. So yeah, we can exclude those very strong hands from his range, knowing that he would play those anytime. We only leave weak hands here, the hands that he can actually fold, and this way the calculations will be more accurate in terms of removal effect. And for all the other players, if they have all the options available, if they can raise, call, fold, shove, then of course we leave their ranges at 100%. Or if we think that UTG always raises, or we want to calculate a spot where UTG raised, then we leave him with one option, which is raise, of course, and we adjust his range accordingly. We only leave hands that he would actually use as a raise. And it's actually up to us to assume which hands he would like to raise. And again, Simple Preflop will calculate the reactions of all the other players based around this 11% raising range. And yeah, again, we can choose ranges from the ones that we have saved previously. Again, we can create a range manually. We can use this matrix. We can load preset range. We can paste ranges. We can save ranges. We've been through it already. And that would be it. Thank you for all your time and good luck at the tables. Dubbed by Inspire. See you around.